Yes, sir.
So I'll go back to yesterday where we were. I want to go back to Bombay and really actually now speak about Bombay, where you lived, what was your time there, your memories there, your emerging friendships that you had with Korea, Doshi at that time. What are your memories which belong to Bombay?
Oh, you see, as you know, I started, I had yesterday told that there was a point of movement when I had a number of alternatives to choose from. And I decided to resign from PWD and set up my own practice. And then there was a question of whether it should start in Delhi or Bombay. And then I started from Bombay because at that time, the state of Maharashtra, the Bombay presidency, which was Gujarat and Maharashtra together, that was separated out. And Ahmedabad was declared the capital of Gujarat. And it was anticipated that a lot of work will be originated from Ahmedabad. That was one reason. And the other reason was that Charles Korea was in Bombay, and Doshi, whom I had not not become a friend at that time, but Doshi, I knew when I was working on the High Court in Chandigarh. See, at that time, the drawings, High Court and Secretariat drawings were coming from Paris and signed in a very flourished manner. We couldn't make out that who was this Frenchman who was sending such beautiful, lovely drawings, which we had a hard time to understand also because this was the first time that we saw the shadows, shades, etc. in the drawings themselves. Then we found out that it was our Doshi, P.V. Doshi, from, who in Maharashtrian, who was working there. And it was very nice. And then Doshi, when he returned back from Paris, so he came first to Chandigarh. And because he was investigating, he also had a number of choices. Chandigarh was one, and another choice was to supervise building the Corbusier in Ahmedabad. By that time, Corbusier had been engaged, to the mill owners building the Shodan's house, and etc. in Ahmedabad. So Doshi opted to come to Ahmedabad instead of staying at Chandigarh. He opted to take on this challenge of supervising Corbu's building. So, and when he was in Chandigarh, I had met him. So on account of those meetings with Doshi and with Charles Korea, I started in Bombay. So Bombay was good and bad. Memories could be bad because we had started, we were all struggling for jobs, but we got different types of jobs. It's quite interesting. With Charles Korea at that time, he came one day and said, Raj, how would you like to do a stadium? I said, stadium, fantastic to do a stadium. This is, but there is only one catch, that the mayor of Ahmedabad has fixed a fees of 50,000 rupees for the stadium. He says, all that you have to do is to design one bay and the rest will follow. So 50,000 rupees will be there, so I'll share it with you, 25,000. I said, well, whatever, it's a stadium, so it's very, very interesting for me to do it. I will do it. And then Charles, in turn, at that time he realized that it was a good opportunity to make a good statement. And he called his friend Fred Taylor from USA, who was his class fellow in MIT earlier, and who was eager to come and work in India. So Fred Taylor came to work on this building, and then along with Fred Taylor and I from Charles' office, and we developed this stadium which is in Ahmedabad. I think it's a cantilever, folded plate cantilever with inclined leg, and which is inclined in such a manner so that the movements at the base are minimum. So that got built also. And
it's a 20-meter cantilever.
It's a 20-meter cantilever.
One of its first of its kind in the world.
That was first of its kind. Well, here in India, because as I told you, in M&M Whitney, I had designed a cantilever for 150 feet. So this was, so it was very, very nice working on that stadium and with Charles Correa. And then at that time, with Doshi had got an assignment of Gujarat State Fertilizer Corporation, sort of the entire housing and administrative offices full. And he sort of asked me to look after the structure and all the other services. So which I did. And the only thing was I had to visit Ahmedabad every week on account of that job. So we thoroughly enjoyed. And that is the period when Doshi and I came very close to each other. Doshi was raising, he got married, and his children were coming up, and I think I was fond of children, and I think they became very close friends. Doshi, his wife, Kamubayan, and the daughters, Tejal, Radhika, Manisha, we all became very good friends because due to my weekly visits, I would go and stay with Doshi at that time, and it was very, very enjoyable. And so we did this job in Gujarat State Fertilizer Corporation. It's very interesting. Some of the buildings were interesting.
Doshi uncle keeps talking about the water tank that was being designed there.
Yeah, water tank is known, but there were other buildings also, and we tried out a number of things. I think ideas at that time, totally Bombay, and then my chance came when this new great insurance
building.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see that came my way with the architect, this Reddy Concini, Italian architect, who I lost yesterday. I mentioned that Atomic Energy Commission that was setting up its buildings and had hired Italian architects and engineers, and this Italian architect, had an assignment in Bombay to, I think there was an existing garage, and on the top they got some FAR to utilize, and he could go up above the garage, and so he was struggling to take the columns in the garage were very irregular. He was struggling to take those columns up, and somehow through a friend, I got into the picture, and I suggested a completely new building, considering the existing slabs, etc., which he accepted, and then this came. I think this resulted in a very interesting structure of Gujarat State Fertilizer insurance companies. And we had large columns, 2 large columns per bay. Then they came out of the garage, and then they spread out like fingers, you see, to form the total building. So it was very interesting. So then that is when I did the first tall building in Bombay at that time.
Usha Kiran.
26-story, Usha Kiran. So it was nice. Bombay experience was quite nice. You see. And I must mention, that me, when I started my practice finally from Bombay, it started as Rajan Vakil, Dr. R.N. Vakil, who was later the dean in SEPT. He and I were together in New York, and we had decided to start a firm together. So we started Rajan Vakil from, but somehow it didn't work out. And so then he went to Ahmedabad and I stayed in Bombay. And I started practicing in my name, Mehndira. Then later on, there was, these were very exciting days. You see, those, Charles said, well, I think let's all form a big consortium. Charles, Doshi, myself, Dr. Keel, and Shirish Patel. Shirish Patel, Charles knew. So a number of meetings, but nothing happened. But in the process, I got to know Shirish, and then Shirish and I formed a partnership. That was, and we were in Bombay at that time. Towards the end of my stay, there was a partnership with Shirish, but later on, we did Shirish worked on this Petit Hall, etc. At that time, with the hollow core walls and hollow core slabs. And the interesting thing is, because this was being done for the first time, Shirish had organized load tests for the walls and the slabs in a big way, I think, full-time structure. So it was very interesting. These were very interesting times. And so later on, in 70, I came to Delhi.
Also, you in the 60s, you also did the Hindustan Lever Pavilion with Charles. You started with that, or?
Yeah, Hindustan.
All these photographs are there on the Instagram account. I mean, lots of the students were there. They go to Instagram. Many of these buildings are already there. But the Hindustan Lever
Pavilion, there was an exhibition, at that time, and Charles one day came to the office and put down a crumpled paper on my table. He says, Raj, how would you like to a little pavilion of this shape? I said, very good, but it's sort of a crumpled paper, very odd shape, and plates here and there. But I said, well, then he told me that there is an exhibition in Delhi, and he's been appointed by Hindustan Levers for a pavilion, and this is what he wants to build. I said, well, not exactly this, but we can try and crumple the paper the way it will behave structurally also. And that was done, and it was still, I think that was, it got built because it was all a granited structure with formwork. And
it was built by the structural drawings and the model alone. There were no other real drawings.
Yeah. So there were very interesting times at that time. And I was, the interesting thing was that I started working with Charles, with Doshi, and Mr. Kanmende also.
The Gandhi labor.
In
the Gandhi Memorial.
Gandhi Memorial started when I was in Bombay. It started the concept. So it was very, very interesting. There was one competition, MCD, Ahmedabad, the municipal corporation had floated for a commercial building, and when we Kanbinde, Doshi, Charles were all shortlisted. And all the three of them asked me to do the structure for the competition. So it was tough for me to have different ideas, different structural systems, and just keep hold privacy between.
This was which company?
Never that building. Mr. Kanbinde won the competition, but the building never came up. Later on, but it was very interesting experience.
So Tanuja has asked here, Tanuja Kanbinde, since we're talking about him, it would be great to know how you conceive such elegant structures. What is your process like? This is what everyone wants to know. Like, how do you think? How do you, and how has the thinking process refined itself from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s? Like, how do you work?
Well, thinking process has refined itself through the times, I should say. But how, when I think somehow or the other, I think I acquired this sort of attitude of that whenever a project came to me, so even if there was some preconceived structural system, I would look at it that if I were to think of the structural system, how would I do it? And then how can so if I have to do it, then how would look, etc. Because I started this quite early, and luckily I was working with my architects who had become friends and who were open to suggestions, etc. So the process of evolving a structural system, you do it along with the architect. You can't do it in complete isolation, even though you may think and achieve it in isolation, then because you have to perform a certain function which the architect is in charge of. And then there are services, etc. And at that time, there was one thing, integration of function and services and structure. There was a big sort of a wave at that time, and whatever we did, we tried to think of all these, and we were fortunate that the solutions did come out well, and they attracted attention.
The solutions could have been putting columns everywhere at every 6 meters. There are buildings in Ahmedabad. I'm not in Ahmedabad. I've seen in Amritsar and other places where they have columns at every 8 feet. I mean, it's ridiculous, the type of structures. So what was your process? What was your structural ideology for anything that came to you? Hello, I think so. You're on, can you mute yourself, sir?
नहीं वो हमारे नौदी कौन सी ना नौदी
कौन बोल रहे
वही में 4 आदमी निकल गए बूम में 4 नौदी में 4 इसे वो एरिया सील हो गया हाँ
श्री धौंदियाल जी हेलो
हाँ
हेलो
जो थे हाँ वो बुधार जानो का बुधार जो मंदिर दंते जानते ना बुधार बुधार बांधी जाओ
Sir,
वो
just
वहीं
give
को तो
me
था।
some time. I am checking this. What is happening with this?
हाँ नौरी बुधाड़।
Yeah, yeah.
अरे
I'm
ये
just
सब
checking.
चलेगा फिर सब सभी
Yes,
और
sir.
लोग तो देखना और लोग चलेंगे।
Jayashree ma'am.
हाँ वो नौरी बुधाड़ था ना वो।
Sir, just give me 2 minutes. I am fixing this.
हाँ उसने भूत बांध दिया था बांध।
Sir, with ma'am, so.
उसकी बहुत कहानियां हैं उसके। और उसके लड़के थे वो भी ठीक थे। अब तो ये नए वाले कुछ नहीं। उसका लड़का था पियोर 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 जावेद नो वो भी काफी कुछ जानता था।
Hello, sir.
अब उसके नाती हैं पता नहीं कुछ जानते कि
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you mute yourself, Thondial sir? I'm unable to.
हाँ गांव में करेंगे। यहाँ पर तो वो अपना और गांव में करेंगे फिर भी। और क्या करेंगे ले जाएंगे वो। अभी बात नहीं हुई मेरी। अब रात को बात करूंगा कहीं।
Hello, sir.
लेने से लेके जाना।
Yeah, ji.
वो रात को आया कल।
I'm really sorry, sir. It is fixed. It is getting fixed.
नहीं गड़गंगा गया गड़गंगा।
What is
Since
it?
I don't have the control.
गड़गंगे करके आ गया वो।
That is the.
सुबह के आधा करीब 11 बजे 12 बजे 4 बजे करा।
Jayashree ma'am.
What is the issue?
Ma'am, Mr. Dhondial's mute. He is unmuted actually. Can you just put him on mute?
Now he's on mute.
He's on mute. He's on
Now.
mute. Now.
Now it is there. Yeah, it was. There was some disturbance earlier.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I'm really sorry, sir. You can continue, sir.
तो अपनी मम्मी को ले जाएगा कि क्या करेगा।
He's not on. Hello. Hello.
जी
Can you mute yourself?
मम्मी जी क्या
Sir, please mute yourself, Dhondia, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sir, please continue.
Yeah, where were we?
Yeah, so we were talking about so this is actually very interesting because this is what Mr. Raj is always shy about. So I think this interruption he has caused it. Because he never likes to talk about his process and his engineering intuition so much. So we were talking about your engineering intuition, like
It's difficult.
even today, structural engineers will find the simplest solution, the least confusing solution, and you always stuck your neck out. Hello, Jayashree ma'am.
Yeah, hello. I continue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are quite right in making this statement that I stuck my neck out with every project because I considered this as a challenge. But some of them, came to me when some structures were evolved together with the architect. Some came to me because the architect had won a competition, like STC, the architect,
Raj.
Rajreval. He had won a competition, and then it came to me. So he had conceived the building in large spans, etc. But and I made that possible,
So firstly, you never said it's not possible.
Yeah, and that I had this bad habit of saying that it's not possible. Try to do everything fine some way or the other.
And you did all these buildings before the computers came, before there were softwares.
That's right. Before
So
there was software.
There needed to be very strong instincts and strong sort of, it's almost like you were connected to be able to do this.
Yeah, I had one advantage. You see, even though computers had not come and we no programs were there, but when I started practice in 60s, there was only one mainframe Tata computer in Bombay. In the entire country, there was one computer in Bombay. Tata Institute of Fundamental Research had a mainframe computer cube, which all the cards had to be punched and so on and so forth. So one of the engineers in our office, Fateh, he acquired mastery over working in the computer. So, but we had to be very choosy and very selective. So we did a whole lot of verification, double check on the computer with the help of T.T. Fateh in Tata Institute of Fundamental Research Computer. When I was in Bombay and when I came to Delhi, then in Delhi, believe it or not, there was no computer available, and then gradually I think some computers came, but when I came to Delhi, I started using Kanpur. Kanpur, there was a couple, Dr. and Mrs. Sethi, who both were engineers, and they would verify, you see, because I could sort of, I had engaged them to verify a whole lot of things because I was doing for the first time and I had no codes, etc., to support me. So but I had to take decision and post decisions verify that those decisions were correct or not. So it was every building went through this stage, that was built at that time, and all of them, the Hall of Nations, the NDMC building, Deep Singh's two buildings, Charles Korea's LIC building, and Doshi's buildings in Ahmedabad. So all of them had some feature or the other, which I decided I had to take decision, etc., and then I managed to verify somehow or the other. So it's just I've been very lucky and fortunate that I've had colleagues who were very, very receptive, of ideas and eager to do. I think that,
And they were also fortunate to have you because you created the history of modern Indian architecture. You literally structured it. I mean, if till 1990, if you had to look back, would you have ever thought that you would have structured the history of Indian architecture?
I never thought I would have. But I actually had no idea that every building was sort of had, which I had worked on, was a significant building. Till, there was this, once, I forget the years, but India Fair in France, and introducing Indian culture and an Indian technical know-how and so on. Then a book had to be compiled, I think, so Ram Sharma was in charge of that. And so after he got various entries and then finally made the selection, and then that is the time that I learned that I had made some contribution, because most of the buildings which is selected to sort of represent Indian art, modern Indian architecture, at that I had something or the other to do with it. But they were interesting times.
So there's someone from there's a question from Mridul Naidu. She's asking, what are your views about the new earthquake-resistant code IS 1893, which has driven up steel consumption quite a lot and removed floating columns?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, well, you see, I'm glad I did all the floating columns before the code came, because starting with the Shivnath Prasad's building, that what what is this, Akbar Hotel. Akbar Hotel. Then there are a number of buildings, and Moria Hotel. Moria Hotel is all has floating columns.
Moria Hotel is
Moria Hotel, yeah, Moria Hotel has also a transfer girder, different, but I tried different shape transfer girders in number of them. But today, they will not permit, But it is true. I think one has to honor, the code of the time, and the code is conservative, and one has to honor it today. Today, I won't be able to do that sort of a. Today,
That's
I won't be able
interesting.
to do a number of structures which have already been done, and they're standing, and they're withstanding the forces, minor earthquakes, etc., which have occurred. But so my view is that yes, it has become very stringent. But we are all trying to get it revised. All of them. I think our Association of Structural Engineers has taken it in a big way. What else?
And also about your, so one person is asking Ravi Khan Here, he's from Pune, he's an architect from Pune, he's asking about your communications in the time without internet, without CAD drawings. So this is the new generation that can't imagine the world without.
Yeah.
So how did communication happen when you went for meetings? And you were in a generation where there was no fax also. I think
There was no fax. There was no, the telephones were
No.
not. There was no STD was there, but you have to make trunk calls, and it was a different sort of way of life completely, and instant transfer of knowledge which you have today, not knowledge, instant transfer of information which you have today, did not exist while I was working.
Can you hear
can-
us once? Can everyone hear? Sandeep, can you hear
Yes,
us?
yes, you're audible very well. Please go on.
So all these facilities were not there, and we didn't manage with what do you call? We had that. I've forgotten even the names of the systems that we had. Telex was very much there. Fax was, so we managed. I think there was nothing much to say about it. What else?
Okay. So let's go on. Delhi came. Why did you move to Delhi? And that's when.
Why did I move to Delhi? Well, that's also.
And what are your memories? What are your key memories around Delhi?
Well, I moved to Delhi in '70, and I was already 46 years old at that time, but I am not married on account of various reasons. But in 1968, from Bombay, I had gone back to America because we had suddenly we didn't have any work, and we were under debts and so on and so forth. But everybody said there are possibilities of work in Africa, and we can do some work here for other countries. So I had taken a trip through Africa to America, and then stayed in America again for 2 years, trying to get some work which could be done by my office, and I managed to do that. I think to some extent, where without these computer facilities and all that, it was all done by mail. and hard copies by mail, so of drawings. So at that time, I had partnership with Shirish, and Shirish is from Bombay, and we got a job in Delhi at that time of this ISBT job. ISBT somehow came our way, and when I came back from America, so this ISBT job was there to be serviced from Delhi, and some jobs were there from Bombay. So we decided that Shirish will stay in Bombay and I will move to Delhi to look after the jobs in that region. So that is how I came. And another reason was that before I had gone to America, I had met a girl who I liked, and she liked me, and we were good friends. And she also moved. She was a big executive of an advertising firm. So she was transferred to Delhi she was selected by another smaller firm of advertising, marketing and advertising, and sent to Delhi. So she was in Delhi, so I came to Delhi because of ISBT and because of this girl whom I had intended to marry. And then in Delhi I came and I got married to her, and a new phase of life started with me. And that actually most of the jobs which you've been talking about, they all came to me after I got married, because my luck changed, as if she brought luck for me. And all these jobs which have sort of...
You're talking about my mother, no? Yeah.
I'm talking about your mother.
Mother, I think Amika's here. I don't know whether Shomik's here.
Yeah.
Amika, I can see she's there.
So because since I married so late, and she was also but she was 13 years junior to me. She was 32, 33. So we had no time to waste. We had to raise a family, so we had to raise a family. So we decided to raise a family. And in 4 years, we got 3 children. And that was fun. It was a lot of fun for both of us to raise them all together. The difference between my eldest and the next, my eldest is Shomi, and the next one is Amika, and then Rohit, of course. The difference between Shomika and Amika was 1 year, and then Amika and Rohit was 2 years. And that's it. And then and with our, my life also changed quite a bit.
And in that time, you built the Hall of Nations. When 3 of us were born, from 1970 to 73, you had built the Hall of Nations.
All the very significant buildings, Hall of Nations,
Hindon River Mills, all the significant buildings.
STC.
So can you talk about them? Can you talk about these 2 buildings when we were all just born and you went and built these buildings? And also about Bucky Fuller, he came and saw it.
Bucky Fuller.
And also there's a question here about, about whether there was emotions of patriotism that sort of guided you towards this nation building exercise, because these buildings are seen as nation building forms that allowed the nation to image itself almost, especially the Hall of Nations. So was there a sense of patriotism that was there?
Of course, the sense of patriotism was what was one element which had, when I took this final decision that, I had a return ticket in my hands and a return visa to America. And I had this option, and I had this, I told this yesterday that Minoru Yamasaki, who had for whose pavilion I had come to build here, then during the construction he also came here. He became a very good friend, very good friend. He was very open-hearted, and he had offered me to join his office as an associate at that time. So all these offers were there, but eventually the decision was to start a consultancy in India, because I was, you see, when I mean, I can cite this, that my feelings and motivations. You know, when I did High Court and Secretariat, I was all by myself. I had to take the decisions by myself. There was nobody I could discuss with it, whether it is right or wrong, but I had to take the decisions, and it got built. And that time I thought something was lacking, that I had to study more. So I went abroad to study more. But then when I worked for Eminent Whitney, I saw the atmosphere there, you know, that the six, all engineers, brilliant engineers working on different projects. So if you had any problem which bothered you, you discussed with A, B, C, or D, you know, and it was very interesting. So when I had to take a final decision, when I came back, after I came back, to take a final decision, as I told yesterday, this was one of the very important motions that I think I to do something for the country and have similar conditions, working conditions in the country as were in America, and sort of do also structures which were bold. You know, said in America, I was sitting with Reverend Whitney and doing this 150 feet cantilevers, so, and 400 feet diameter domes and all that, twisted columns of this Dublin embassy, American embassy. And all each one a unique structure. So said, why not do it for my own country, you know, and introduce something which I hope I have been able to do, you know.
I think you have, for sure.
So, but
And
this
then
was quite a motivation when I took this decision to stay back. Then patriotism, if you may so
that
say
was
so,
key factor.
was one very important factor for me to sort of stay back in.
But you still did look up to people like Bucky Fuller, who came and
yeah,
he
Bucky
came and saw Hall of Nations and
Bucky
Hindenburg that time.
Bucky Fuller, also Bucky Fuller was introduced to me by Charles Courier, and Charles knew him when he was studying in MIT. He had met Bucky Fuller, and so when he came to Delhi, he came to India, then Charles knew him, and when he came to Delhi, Charles told me to look him up, and sort of I introduced me to him. And then later on, Bucky and I and my wife Shukla became very good friends, because every time Bucky would come every year or every second year and stay for a few days, and he would come home for a meal, and he even offered me, asked me to go back to America and sort of contribute to his domes, etc., etc. Anyway, but once you know, these various projects were going on in Delhi after marriage, then Bucky happened to come, and I was doing this Hall of Nations and Hall of States were under construction, and Indian River Mill was under construction, but now all of nations, all of industries were in situ concrete, which we had no choice because there is no contractor wanted to build it in precast, etc. And because that level of accuracy they thought they will never achieve, so it had to be done in situ. But in Dun River Mills, I had worked out a system of precasting double T's at the site, and lifting and this was also an interesting structure of 50 feet span, double T's with about 80 feet span, 82, 84 feet span arches, which picked up. I think everybody perhaps has seen that structure. But,
it's there on
yeah,
the Instagram page.
So when Fuller happened to come there, I was very happy, and I said, I told Raj Rewal that Fuller is here, I know him, and I'll bring him to the site to see all of nations. And then I told the management of DCN also that I'll bring him, take him to that 100 Mills. So I took him, but the Hall of Nations first was the first job. When he came, he saw, looked around, what he saw. I was so used to it. So we were all so used to seeing children playing in the mud and women carrying concrete on their head, carrying other materials here and there, and chaos, scaffolding here and there, everywhere. But we were so used to it, we had never paid any attention that this was not a proper way. But Fuller looked all around, and he was quiet. We had organized a little reception for him because everybody, there was an IAS officer in charge of the total fare. He was also there. The chief engineer in charge of construction was there. Everybody, Raj Rewal was there. And we had a model of the entire concept in a room. And all of them were assembled. We had 10 people. And when Fuller, I took him very proudly, to show the model, and I thought I had shown him. So Fuller sat down and he said, what do you, we just asked, we thought we'll get some, some praise. But Fuller said, I have not seen a more stupid thing being done in my life. We were all stunned. He said, you people, you have thought of a modern space frame, which is a building of tomorrow, and but the system of construction is, you take an antique system of construction, women carrying concrete, etc. Why didn't you work out some precast techniques or some other techniques, to construct modern? This is a stupid thing to do, this blah blah. He was very angry. He spent little time there with us, and so we were all very crestfallen and disappointed. But then I took him to Indian River Mills, same day, and after that. And there he saw these heavy 12-ton double T's being lifted by, we had made arrangement of tractor trolleys to bring them, and then boats, lifts to pick them up and place them on these double, hollow girders, etc. He was very impressed. You have thought of that, and it was balanced out by him. So,
but did you finally agree? Because Hall of Nations, that's why it became so unique, is because it was because of the labor and the construction. that
Yeah,
would be
Hall
built
of
the way it
Nations,
was.
so far as we are concerned, we had no alternative. I mean, if you know the history of Hall of Nations, that we had this space frames, we thought of space frames, then we thought first steel, then we gave up steel because different sections, there was, we had to depend only on one or two agencies to build it, and different sections were not available, you know. So then we thought of precast concrete, and I made a joint and members of precast concrete to be assembled. That is how it was put to tender as a precast concrete building. But the contractors, none of the contractors, none of them, even the smartest at that time was Steerat Ram. They undertook, they said, this precast concrete will require a level of accuracy which we can never achieve, you know, and we won't. So, but we can attempt. They also were very shaky when they saw everything, the joints and this and that, yeah, in situ construction. So I had worked out the system of drawings and precast system. So I had again to start working the joints of in situ. It was completely and very, very quickly take decisions so that the construction should. I said, I think yesterday I said that this space frames earlier, you see, that was a period, we were doing, some of us were doing a number of jobs in Iran. So in one job in Iran, I had to use some space frames. So I had the Iranian firm said that why don't you go to Germany and England to look at various space frame structures and before deciding. And I had gone there, and every space frame system which I saw, they showed me the laboratory in which they had the prototype had been sort of tested. You see the joints, how very elaborate way of testing the joints and the members and the connection, everything. And so this was my background of space frames. And so when I had to do one, and then suddenly I had to do this huge space frame in situ. And without any time for any sort of verification, I had to sort of decide myself what size of joint would be, and how the bars would go from one member to another, the shape of the members, etc. A lot of these decisions were taken, and by the grace of God, it all worked out and came out to be a very, very interesting structure. Yeah, it was very, as Rohit has said earlier, as you said, I did stick my neck out on various occasions. Very sort of.
So there's this question from Jardhan KS that, sir, you have been so much part of innovation and structure in those times where there was probably no computers and no defining bylaws and codes. Today, even with so much technology and portal regulation, do you feel that there is enough structural innovation happening in the country compared to the kind of structural innovations we see in the Western countries? So that is one thing about the comparison between East and West. And the second is also that, do you think the software has made the engineering intuition that I keep coming back to yours has sort of dulled it in the engineers in today's generation? And once the software started, that intuition and that confidence that you spoke about that you gained in Aman and Whitney has now been taken over by software. And secondly, whether are we truly at the same level as the West again in terms of innovation, engineering innovation?
Well, I must say engineering innovations always have been in the West more and in the East less, in our country also, for the simple reason that they believe in research and looking ahead, and we don't believe in research and looking ahead. So the Western world always looks ahead, and they looking ahead, they invest in research work, and they have ideas and concepts and systems, and we don't. Somehow this is lacking. We are hoping that in India similar conditions will prevail sooner or later, and they will definitely, because India has changed, completely changed since the time that I came, and now the younger generation which has come up in the field, they're far more alert, and they oriented towards research and new ideas, and they will come. And now we can compete with any Western country with our technical knowledge. I think we have more or less at the same level. I think we don't sort of feel in a way. Along with Charles, I designed a building in Manhattan, which on that sort of that solid rock, very narrow sort of a building. And we did the design here. We got a check from in New York, and it was carried through. So we are backward in new ideas, new concepts, but we are getting there. And I think we are getting there pretty fast, and we will be there, and we will. I think a lot of hope from Indian engineers and architects to sort of come up with concepts which set the pace, which are different, and which sort of are appreciated and followed, and so on and so forth.
So my next question is it's a two-wing thing. One is I'm going to take Katie's question. Katie is here. Katie Ravindran is listening, and he says pranam to you. And Ojan Ghosh is also saying pranam to you. And Katie has asked, Hall of Nations structural design and architecture converges completely. Could you discuss the design process? So that is one thing. But for that, I also want to ask you very clearly, after 1990s, when this form of, when this ideology that the architects followed, where they tried to structurally express forms, was totally disappearing. Why did you continue working with them, and why didn't you start your own practice where you yourself became the architect and the engineer, or you became the head of design in a certain way? Because many engineers did that. Because when you have said we've grown up in a house of very strong aesthetics, which came from Mama and you. So there was this clear, especially by 1990, there was this clear chart you could have taken, which was start your own practice, which was structural and architectural versus the other. But first, Katie's question about how the process of structural design and architecture converged totally.
Well, that's a long story, Katie, to tell you, because every decision on Hall of Nations, the first shape, because Rajrewal and I worked in very close cooperation with to, I think, evolve, Hall of Nations and Halls of Industries. I think it was some sort of a very good jugalbandi. We complemented each other, and there were a number of decisions taken by him, a number of decisions taken by me. But the contribution is the shape of that member as a rhomboid, so that everything is planar, and then the joint size I had to decide, because which the bars could be contained, and because there is that joint carries 9 members. 9 members means each member has 4 bars. So that means 36 bars to be accommodated in that, or have to cross through. So he sort of, I think, I must say, God was great to guide me, because I didn't have any guidance from any other technical person. I took decisions. The forces from the top had to be taken to in members. Forces at top had to be taken to the members, and forces below. The bars had to pass through the joint and bend and twist in such a manner that they did not burst. Very large forces were there. So my engineering background, whatever it is, I worked out. I think each joint had to be worked out, that how each bar, it had to be figured out how it will go down to. So it was all those decisions, and to realize the structure, the 9 member joints, to realize them and plan them and then draw them, draw them so that it will be, because as I had said earlier, we had tried to sort of in the drawings, tenders for Hall of Nations and Hall of Industries on precast construction, and I had made drawings for that. But then, since contractors opted for in situ, so I had to very quickly work out the systems of in situ. But when it was worked out, the contractors, they came to the first level of joints and gave up. They said, it's impossible. You can't build this building. It's really impossible. I had to stand there and guide the sort of carpenters to make formwork for the joint, formwork for the members. Worked out a system of the bars, sort of to place the bars in the joint, because it had to be a specific sequence. That is how the bars could be placed in the joint. All that was very exciting, and I had to do it joint after joint. Well, by the grace of God, we managed to do all that. And you see, there's a number of stories in Hall of Nations. First, so far as the roof is concerned, we had thought of that we will make all this frame, and the roof also will be in steel. In steel, and sort of encased in members shaping. So I worked out a complete system in steel. Steel fitted in the rhomboid sections, but the contractors refused to do that. And then they said they would prefer to have scaffolding because it had to be so high scaffolding. They said they'll prefer to have scaffolding and do it in concrete, reinforced concrete.
Did you have sleepless nights when the Hall of Nations was being built?
I had that. I would say, the decisions which I took at that time, I don't know. I mean, today, if you ask me to do a building that type, I would never be able to do that.
But it seems like the codes will also not allow you to do a building like that.
Yeah, perhaps you're right. But I did that. I had sleepless nights.
So why did you not start your own practice post
No,
1990?
I didn't start my practice because I had this, I mean, such senior, all of the architects of name were close friends, I started with Doshi, Charles, Convendes, Raj Rival, Kuldeep Singh, Ranjit Sabiki, his partner, and Ram Sharma, and they all became very good friends, and they sort of gave respect to me. I gave respect to them. I had no idea to become an architect, and I was not trained to be one. And
No, but you had an aesthetic intuition.
Aesthetic intuition for structure. You see, with others, I did.
Because also post 1995, your collaborations with all these architects also reduced tremendously. The new generation came in. And I want you to give a few lines to the new generation that came.
New generation came in.
Stefan Palmier came, and Anupam came.
With each one of them, I have done one or two structures because you see, the thing is, they with each one, there is some after a certain period of time, they found other people to collaborate with, on account of different circumstances. Like Doshi, got his son-in-law, Rajiv Katwalia, to join him, and he worked. Rajiv was much younger, so once he got that, then its collaboration with me more or less stopped. And then what is his name? Raj Rival got his brother, he worked under me for some time, then he became independent. Raj Rival went to him for his structure. So I kept on losing, my friends as clients, architects, but I had no intention to work as an architect.
But can you talk about the new generation?
The new generation,
now
I think you asked
with,
another question about the computers and their
there's also
relevance.
I don't know.
The
computers and the
I think that is a
of an engineer.
very, very sad story. So far as the computers are concerned, that almost anything any engineer can do today, with the help of computers, But the question is that they, without intuition, without, you see, one thing which somehow it was developed and given by God was that the building or the structure, I could sort of realize that how it would behave and where compression, where tension, how members will, how the forces will flow through, etc. Now, the present generation does not have that capabilities. They just go to the computer and fill in and sort of get results. So as the saying goes, so far as the computer is concerned, garbage in, garbage out, because then without understanding the building and how it behaves, etc., you go to the computer and whatever computer says, you do it. You let computer take all the decisions. It's no engineering, because that is unfortunately happening now, which has to change. But you see, the reason for all this, there are reasons also. Unfortunately, the younger generation of engineers who are trying to work as structural engineers, they find that the fee structure has become so miserably low, that they don't do anything else but garbage in and garbage out and service the buildings. So the whole system.
The whole system. So this whole East-West divide in innovation is also the system, our social system. That is,
because built environment requires input from so many disciplines, which has to be recognized. It requires an architect, it requires engineers, it requires a town planner, it requires electrical engineer, it requires plumbing engineer, it requires landscape architect, etc. So a team, it is a teamwork, and if every member of the team, sort of has responsible and is recognized, his contribution is recognized, then it will grow, But unfortunately, it is not happening. Somehow or the reason, that's where Habib comes in as chairman of the Council of Architects. If we can sort of create conditions where, because the architecture to produce classic buildings or anything, you require very close cooperation between the architects and engineers. That's a whole lot of engineering which is involved, and I hope it comes up, but so far it has. I mean, it's different. I work with a few and who give me the fees that I ask for when they're very good at it, and but I think. But I hope these conditions.
On that note, let's go to the new generation, because post 1990s, you like the Kanvinde children, Tanuja and Sanjay. You have a very good rapport with them. Then Stephen Pommier, Anupam Bansal. You've done some work with Bandhani and me. You have also worked with our batchmates now, Rahul and Sonal from Opolis. You have, I think, engaged with Manisha and Shantanu of Moof also. And I think, I don't know which are the other younger architects you work with. So what is you have seen a whole canvas of generation after generation after generation. You work with even Gurpreet and Sanchita Akar, and I think something you try to do with Abhimanyu Dalal. So how are you, how do you have also now seen the history of the evolution of the profession of architecture. So what is the major differences you find in the architects across generations?
Well, I think you mentioned all these younger people with whom I've collaborated, and I'm happy that you have mentioned them. I enjoyed working with them, each one of them, and it was because I would like to give the example of Salarjung Museum. Worked in, I forget the names of these 3-4 architects together.
Mm.
And so what they had brought to me was 2 buildings full of columns here and there, etc. And I said, remove all the columns, put the columns on the periphery and around the courtyard. They added light well. So just 2 sets of columns, and then put plates, and they accepted the idea. You see, and it came up very interesting buildings, large and similarly with Pommier, and Pommier came with this building French
Alliance France.
Alliance Française, which again he had this
Stefan and
huge
Anupam and Rajesh.
Yeah,
AVR.
they all with cantilevers and again a number of. So I think very quickly they they were very open to the ideas, which was very nice. I think most. No, I am very happy about. I think the younger generation. There was lots of hope that they will do well. I think, unfortunately, I think there is something which the entire profession has to apply itself to. The way now developers sort of are taking over, and sort of the clients go to the developers, not to professionals, and the developers select the professionals on their terms, etc. It's something I think which the entire profession has to think about it, how to go, how to sort of counter this, because once this takes hold, it's a system which is very, so far as the client is concerned, it's very conducive to the client. You see that he deals with one person. He takes a developer and says that it's your responsibility to hire an architect, an engineer, project manager, this and that, and etc. You give me the product, and you charge me whatever you want. This. So I think this system will prevail. I don't think we'll have any alternative, because the system has prevailed in the West, and it has come now in to our country also. And along with this has come a new concept of EPC contractors. It's not only just the developers, but the contractors who take up the total job and hire professionals and on their terms. So it's a big challenge for the new professionals. I think I'm glad I am out of this now, because I don't think I'll.
But there are a lot of young structural engineers listening to you here. Samad has written. Mayank is here. There are a lot of young engineers here. What do you want to say to them?
Young engineers, well, you give your best to the structure, which is to the problem at hand, and apply. You see, if you give your best to whatever you are doing, I think you'll do a good job. It's don't depend too much on computers. Computers should be taken as an aid, to verify what you think, how the structure will behave, and to verify that the computer should be used not to tell you how the structure will behave, that you should be able to decide as young engineers. And the architects also, young architects, I'll say, well, accept that it is a multidisciplinary profession, and sort of give sort of due respect and regard to other disciplines also, and work together as a team, because then you will produce sort of great works. And I'm sure in India, great works will come up because there is so much of talent available here. And when conditions will improve, I think we are caught up with this problem of corona, etc. But we'll be out of it, this problem. And I'm quite optimistic that we'll be out of this problem and the younger generation will take the Indian architecture and engineering to much greater heights.
Do you have any suggestions for education? People are asking whether teaching can improve for the
Yeah,
future.
well, teaching is atrocious right now. Teaching has to improve. I mean, that's a field by itself, you know, because it is. I mean, it's pathetic when I interview young engineers who recently come out of colleges and find them lacking in fundamental, completely lacking in fundamentals. I think even everybody knows what is WL squared by 8. And if you find an engineer not knowing what is WL squared by 8, it's pathetic. But yeah, I think there's a general feeling that I think the quality of education has come down because it has been expanded so much, so many engineering colleges here and there, and it's becoming commercial activity. I think the entrepreneurs have gone into this profession of education and made it well. I think the younger generation have a whole lot of challenges, but I'm very positive. I'm very optimistic that they will be able to resolve it, etc. Well, I would like to say, I think even though you have not asked me this question, but after 1970, my luck changed, because of my wife, Shubla, who I married. She helped me a great deal, in my professional activities as well as in all because I became very fond of sort of working with associations. So I set up a new associations of consulting engineers, association of structural engineers, consultancy development center, helped in setting up all these engineering consultants in India, help, etc. And was a great help to me, not only these, but a great sort of.
You had a lot of your nieces writing, talk more about Mama. So that's good. It just came from you. I didn't have to take you on. That's
she was a great lady. She did an MBA in Harvard, and she came here. She was selected by no less a person than
Vikram Sarabhai.
Vikram Sarabhai selected her in America to come and teach here in the Management Institute. She taught there, but then she did not very much like the atmosphere. So 1 year she taught there, and then she came to Bombay to work for an advertising firm. And then that is where I met her, in Bombay. And she's a very talented lady, but she pretty soon and that was when after we married, she gave me such full support. She was pregnant and my younger brother fell sick. Veer, who he had porphyria, etc. And both of us went and stayed with them for almost a month. I mean, well, there are a whole lot of stories, but I can't, I don't know. This is not the forum for me to decide. But all that I will say is that he was I think my life changed after I got married, and it was sort of very unfortunate to lose her so early in my life. And she left me. And so that's it, I think.
Yeah, so my last question is that I have personally never seen you waste a single day in your life. And as you turn 96, despite lockdown, you're still attending meetings. So there's someone out here who wrote, would you be inspired by structures of biomimicry? Would you be inspired to do structures using the principle of biomimicry? So can you tell biomimicry principles?
Know what is this biomimicry?
Basically, organic structures, cellular structures of nature, and would you be interested in pursuing that at the age of 96?
I'm too old now. I think I have sort of.
But you still are working.
I'm still working. I do. I think the structure has become my life, and I still, even though now, as God has taken away my eyesight, I had this problem with my retinas in both eyes, age-related macular degeneration. And so I can't see very well, and I can't read books, and I can't read.
You can still do biomimicry. You have a very strong imagination.
I don't want to do anything.
Okay. Last question from Mayank, and there was someone else also. Samad had asked a question which I think I've answered about Hall of Nations, but he can ask you that personally also. Mayank and someone else also has written, people want to know about the Engineers Bill versus the Architects Act, the struggle of that. So that would be probably the closing statement. Someone has also written,
another session.
Mr. Gowda has written, advice on bridging the gap between engineering and architecture. Amendment
I have made so many attempts. That's why I'm hoping that Habib now is with so many previous sort of presidents of the council. I had organized meetings between architects and engineers to have it out and sort out the differences, and accept that they're important to build environment. The concept. That's entirely you feel. Well, I can go a little bit. There's one way that an architect himself decides everything, to whatever knowledge he has of the structure, of services. So his main job is planning and aesthetics of the building. But then he decides that he knows sufficient about the structure to decide about the structure. He knows sufficient about the electricity and the plumbing and HVAC, etc. And then he takes in consultants that here is the building I have thought of. So you do the structure, you fill in the columns and the beams, you do the HVAC, you do the plumbing, so that way the building is not, that's no way of doing building. So I think just at the concept stage, if an architect gets a building project, he selects a team, and the entire team sits together and evolves a concept where there is integration of all services and structure and function and everything. And you come up with great works, you know. So my advice to the younger generation is that honor other professionals with whom you have to collaborate, and take them on board very early in the project at the concept stage, and let the concept be evolved jointly by all concerned. I think right now we're working on projects with a developer in Bangalore, and that is what he's doing. You see, he's taken all the professionals, and he himself is very sort of very much into this field of building, and he has seen the advantage of having all the professionals right in the initial stages and evolve the building, which evolve the complex. I hope the future this is done.
Okay. So this is the very last question from Tanuja Kanvinde. So I just want to, because this is the Kanvinde family is one family which has come from, has crossed generations, and you are working through generations. So just something to them. And she has said that I would really like him to talk about music in his life. So we end with this.
Music in my life. Music made a very important part of my life. I think at one stage I could play sitar and could play it fairly well.
Yeah, we remember that.
But then I gave it up. But music is, I love music, Indian classical music, Indian classical music, Western classical music, and appreciate both. And I have a whole lot of records. I had, when I was in America, I had this record player, which because early morning when I would get up to start study or do whatever my work, I'll put on 10 CDs at 78 RPMs in the record player and put it at low music so that the neighbors are not awakened early in the morning, and then work. For a long time, music has been in the background. But you see, I had music played a very important role in my life, and I appreciated it. And but somehow or the other, then it has slipped out. Now I can't see, so I can't see.
No, but now you're listening to Vedanta.
I'm listening to
That's how the COVID is being spent, listening to Vedanta.
Yeah, I'm listening to Vedanta. Yeah.
And
well, life goes on, changes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this was really a wonderful time with you. I believe nothing could have been special for us than having sir here with us, because it was a time travel actually going into that era. We all have read about things, but I think this was visualized to us by whatever sir has told. All these stories, all these narratives, they are really mesmerizing. So on the behalf of COA Social, I just want to thank you, sir, for your energy, for your enthusiasm, and for all those stories which you shared with us. That was amazing. Like you anything, if you want to add anything on the conclusion, you can definitely add, sir. Rohit, sir.
I want to say that there are a lot of our family from all over the world who are here. So I want to thank them. I just see Urvashi, I know there's Aloka from Canada, Amrita from Canada, my sister from France, my sister-in-laws from the US, and then many people, and then also lots of professionals all over. So thank you everyone for joining. And
Thank you so much, all of you.
Sir.
Opportunity.
And Rohit sir was
Yes, Durganand here. I really would want to thank him and Habib sir to have thought of something like this and come to me. It was great.
Where is
So,
Habib? Is they
Habib,
there?
I don't think managed to join today. Habib is not here, no?
Habib sir is finding it difficult to join because of some connectivity issues. He has just conveyed his apologies, but he was watching on the Facebook for some time where we were streaming. Durganand was also on the Facebook and has said thank you to both of you. He was there yesterday as well, Durganand.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
So, thank you everyone. Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you, Sandeep, for making
Thank
this.
you, sir. It's our pleasure to have you here, sir.
It was a lovely walk down memory lane and so inspiring to hear Sir talk like this. It was like kind of bringing all his projects to life. You know, we would have never got these insights at any other time. All the participants, all the visitors and guests on Facebook have also expressed that they are really, really happy to have heard him. They salute his energy and all of them are wishing him good health and happiness always.
Thank
So,
you.
You.
thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye. Take care, sir.
Okay. Hello.